Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I'm going to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We begin with a look back on Sunday at the flow of the jet stream here. And some of the things we'll be addressing in this video is, first of all, where is the position of this large upper level ridge going in the coming days? Because it was a major component of the severe weather we saw in the northern plains. It's the reason why heat is building back west. It's part of the reason why we've seen a bit of a reduction in the extreme heat in the eastern part of the United States, and it's what sent the storm track into Canada. And that storm track that you see there in Canada, well, at least yesterday, brought a lot of severe weather to parts of the north central plains. Well, we have to ask those questions and then combine that with what's going on with the tropics, and hopefully together with that, we can produce a pretty useful video here. So let's get right on into this. Looking at the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation, while much of the Carolinas were very dry over the weekend, you can see that in the inner mountain west, a lot of thunderstorms kind of circling clockwise around this big upper level ridge, and then riding along its periphery as this low pressure system snuck through Canada, we did see quite a lot of heavy rain in parts of the north central plains. Now, I'm going to keep an eye on the north central plains for you Carolina farmers, especially those that are growing corn and soybeans, because I want you to see a very interesting dynamic that is playing out in the north central part of the United States. But as that very heavy rain slid through that area, we actually did produce quite a bit of severe weather, including this incredible picture of a tornado that was here just to the west of Minneapolis. This is what we call a wedge tornado. That is one that is wider than it is tall from what we can see beneath the cloud base. So this was a pretty massive tornado here moving through parts of Minnesota, doing quite a bit of damage. What it added to was this picture. This is the last 14 days of total accumulated precipitation. Now, for those of you in the Carolinas farming cotton, peanuts, stuff like that, look at how dry it's been here in this part of Texas and Oklahoma. That's where the surface level ridge has been. And all around it, well, we had Hurricane Barry move up the gut here of the Mississippi River, dumping a lot of very heavy rain. We've had these ridge-riding thunderstorms going around the periphery of that surface high-pressure system. But before I show you the details of North and South Carolina, I want you to see this quarter riding through here for those corn and soybean farmers in the Carolinas. That little region I circled there is one of the most productive areas in the world for growing corn and soybeans, and it's been very dry. I live actually in this, so I come to you right here in east central Illinois, a little town called Mahomet, Illinois, just outside of Champaign, Illinois. And that particular area, I have not mowed my grass since July the 6th. I've not had meaningful rainfall since even before that, and it's been very dry. While all around us, a lot of showers and thunderstorms, but some of the most productive ground for corn and soybean farmers right there. Well, take a look at what's going on in the Carolinas. What I've got on the left is the last 14 days total accumulated precipitation. Now, we can see that pockets of heavier rainfall in here between 1.5 inches and some locations getting up to 3.5 inches of rain in the last couple of weeks. A lot of this came through on that front that slid over us a week ago that ushered in that much cooler air that so many of us were desperate to see. But I want you to see this in the context of the percent of normal, the anomaly. So this is the difference from normal over the last 14-day time period, because there are pockets, especially as you get toward the coast, that have been quite dry. And because of that, we've actually seen a shift in our drought monitor. Now, this was released last Thursday, and we started to see here in North and South Carolina, especially in coastal regions, the drought area increase and intensify. And it's simply because we've been missing out on some of the rainfall. Now, what's important to understand here is that the features that tend to drive the big time drought that occupies much of the southeast, those players are not in play right now, which is good. And plus, as we move toward the end of the season, toward when we get a lot more tropical activity, we've kind of survived, I think, the worst part of this. But we're still not out of the woods with having some drier pockets. I'll show you that in a few moments. Just to also make another point, that same quarter that I highlighted right in through here, Illinois, Indiana, and parts of Iowa, that has been dry, you now see drought emerging there. We have not seen drought in this area going all the way back to the end of last year. So this has been some development that we're going to keep a close eye on here. Now, as we progress through the day, overall things are going to be quiet in North Carolina throughout the day on Monday. The low pressure system sitting up here, spinning in parts, just north of Lake Superior And thankfully, there's a front that is draped through this area that'll keep temperatures cool, prevent some extreme heat coming through the Carolinas. But we're going to watch this front progress toward the southeast, maybe bringing in some chances of rainfall as we get to the middle of this week. So let's kind of take a look at our high-resolution rapid refresh model. This begins at 6 a.m. in the morning on Monday. You can see the main frontal boundary moving through parts of Michigan, getting into Indiana, Illinois, then stretching back into Arkansas and Texas. Watch it again here. Throughout the Carolinas today, mostly just going to be some pop-up showers and thunderstorms. So this will be a real hit or miss kind of event here with showers and storms. Most folks not even seeing much but sunshine today in the Carolinas. But we need to see when and where that front gets to us. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes, but I want to step back and get some bigger perspective on this. As we progress through the next 10 days, we're going to have to talk about two important features. One, where is that ridge going? Because that will dictate how storm systems get over to the southeast. You can see right now in the Carolinas over the next 10 days, we're expecting all along that area I just circled there, rainfall amounts generally between 3/4 of an inch and 1.5 inches. Now, the major wild card is we are watching some stuff coming out of the tropics, and I'm going to talk with you about why you see the track of heavier rain looking something like that in the near term, which means we could be keeping some of that bigger tropical moisture away from the Carolinas as we move forward. What do we see when we look at our two major global models here, the European on the left and the GFS on the right? What we're paying attention to here is the next 15 days of precipitation looked at as a percent of normal. Now, overall, we see that a lot of the southeast is picking up on a drier pattern. See that? But you can also see that parts of the Carolinas are much closer to maybe some wetter conditions. We're going to see why that is in just a few minutes here. But this is not the overly wet pattern, and we don't see that all of the different ensemble members, we don't see them trying to bring any major tropical systems right up into the Gulf Coast that could eventually work their way over the Carolinas or smacking smack dab here into Cape Hatteras. We're not seeing that. So we'll talk about what we are seeing in just a few moments. Now, I want to show you this analysis as we talk about longer-term temperatures. From July 14th through the 21st, what the flow pattern of the atmosphere was doing was something a bit more like this. And we saw this sizable ridge that built into the eastern part of the country. And the only reason why there was cooler weather in through here was Hurricane Barry snuck underneath it, but some extreme heat. Well, that all broke down as we look at the last 7 days. So this is our last 7 days of temperature anomalies. We've seen heat build back out west. In fact, California's been scorched with a broader trough feature here keeping us on the cooler side of things. As we move forward in the forecast, what are we expecting to see here? Well, over the next 5 days for the Carolinas, very close to climatological average temperatures. So I'm talking here temperatures in the upper 80s and lower 90s. Meanwhile, in the middle part of the country, cool. And then heat is building underneath that ridge out west as we progress toward the western states. Same thing said in the European model is also being said in the GFS. That's what I have over here on the right. What about days 5 through 10? Again, we really see here that the Carolinas are going back over to much more normal temperatures. And that's as this broader ridge pattern sets up something like this. And we get some cooling here that's going to be setting up in parts of eastern Canada. It's maybe reflected a bit better here in the GFS ensemble, showing you that overall flow pattern keeping those temperatures, really away from the extreme values in the Carolinas. And I can carry this all the way out here until the middle of August. And we see a continuation of that pattern, which is not bringing in extreme heat. And many of us in the Carolinas are loving that in the forecast. So upper 80s, low 90s, that's what you get this time of year. We need to now talk about what this means in terms of precipitation, okay? Now, if we were going to be seeing really, really wet conditions, we typically get it one of two ways. Deep troughs that kind of develop in the southeast like this, bringing up a bunch of Gulf moisture, or tropical systems coming like that. You're not going to see either of those two things as I press play here. Broader ridge develops there in the southwest, and the general flow pattern's doing something a bit more like this with time. And that particular setup is one that keeps us away from the extreme heat, but it is not one that brings in the major precipitation as we get into midsummer here. So what are we seeing in terms of precipitation? Let's start this off again Monday morning, 6 a.m. and play this out. We've already seen to this point. So you can see that you're going to get away on Monday and part of Tuesday really kind of scot-free in terms of major precipitation coming through. But this low pressure system in the Hudson Bay, see its front? That is coming our way. such that by the time we get into Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and evening, that's our best chances of scattered showers and thunderstorms, even pressing into the day on Thursday as well. Now, what happens behind this is we have higher atmospheric pressure pushing in, so right there. But at the same time that higher pressure is moving into the northeast, we are pushing quite a bit of tropical moisture into the Carolinas as we move toward the end of this weekend. Toward the end of this week, into the weekend. And one of the main reasons for that is that there's a larger area of higher atmospheric pressure. I've talked about it several weeks that just sits out here and keeps pumping that moisture in. So watch what happens now as I continue to play this forward, getting you through Friday, into Saturday, and into Sunday. That's where we just tend to see a lot more thunderstorm activity, okay? And that's why you saw when I played this out over the next 10 days, in general, we're expecting the state of North Carolina to see, pretty widespread 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches of rainfall, primarily coming on the motion around that upper level high that's pushing into the Carolinas. So I want you to watch it again. I'm going to click play, and you'll just see the whole flow over the next 10 days. You see that? And what's going on here is we got to be paying careful attention to the tropics and how they are interacting with our weather here in the Carolinas. So let's discuss it. Right now, coming off of Western Africa, there are some very important things to be on the lookout for. First of all, this is a pretty robust, what we call easterly wave. So this is a region of tropical convection. A lot of times our hurricanes are born in this area. National Hurricane Center is watching this particular cluster of thunderstorms, which is moving through the Lesser Antilles, heading up toward the island of Hispaniola and eventually toward the Bahamas. Right now, they've given it about a 20% chance. That's all we're talking about here, a 20% chance of this continuing to develop. But it will be the moisture from this that I'm concerned about for the Carolinas, okay? So looking here over the next 5 days, that's what we're kind of picking up on the path of potential development here. Now, as we move forward, there are some critical pieces to what's going on in the Atlantic. First of all, we've seen a collapse of El Nino. So with El Nino dying off in the Pacific Ocean, this is allowing our wind shear to go back toward normal or even lower than normal. What you're looking at here in the upper left-hand corner, this is vertical wind shear for the tropical Atlantic. The blue line is this year, the black line is average. Look at how much of April, May, and June we've spent above average and then just recently gone back below it. Now that means that without El Nino cranking away in the Pacific, we have an easier time at making tropical systems in the Atlantic because of the reduction of wind shear. What's been suppressing tropical development has been the fact that the vertical instability, which we want it to be more unstable to make more tropical systems, well, we've been below average. And that's primarily because much of the upper level support in the atmosphere has not been in the Atlantic. It's been over in parts of the Eastern Pacific. Well, we're seeing a transition of that, and I expect this to head up more toward normal as we progress through the next several weeks here. The last big player here is the position of the subtropical ridge in the Saharan air layer. Right now, the subtropical ridge, as I keep drawing, is sitting here, and the flow around it, which is clockwise, looks to be steering a lot of these systems away from the U.S. coast. This does not mean we can't get tropical moisture from them, which can just show up in the form of tropical thunderstorms, our normal summertime thunderstorm pattern. But this is at least good because we have to watch the position of this ridge. If it slides east, that tends to shove more systems into the U.S. If it slides west, if it then slides east, it tends to take them away. So we'll keep a close eye on that. And finally, that Saharan air layer, this is just an animation showing you where the dust is right now. And you can clearly see as I played this a couple times here, there's quite a bit of dry and dusty air that's moving off of the west coast of Africa. So this is another factor that these thunderstorms have to contend with, and they tend to not survive a fight with Saharan dry air. Okay, so that's what we're watching in the tropics in the near term. Lastly, I just want to give you a quick global update. After breaking all-time records in parts of Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and France, the pattern has really changed across parts of Europe. So we're now starting to see, look at this deep low-pressure system spinning here multi-day storm track that's moving across parts of Europe here in the near term. What does it look like? Well, take a look at this. Over the next week or so, no major heat stresses through Europe after having a very, very hot last week, breaking those records. And we're continuing to see the cooler than average pattern that is stretching here into the Russian wheat belt. This is Ukraine. The Black Sea is in through that area. They've actually been cooler and wetter than average for some time. In the next 15 days, still paints that same region as being wet. So keep a close eye on what's going on there in and around the Black Sea. Finally, just to take you over to Asia, Indian monsoon got another big pulse of tropical moisture coming in, so we are expecting big rains and flooding rains, which are typical of this time of year for the Indian monsoon. Meanwhile, in China, I just want to show you this map over here on the right. Wherever you see this particular color, I'm going to circle some here and some here. That is where we have cropland. So when we look at this, we can see that those particular regions are expected to see, wetter than average conditions. They're kind of right in through here with time, although the southern part of this area is looking to be on the drier side. What's been interesting is to watch the tropics in the western Pacific Ocean. It's been a very benign year. No major tropical systems right now in the western Pacific, which is not normal. So we're going to have to see how things progress as we move into the month of August and as it impacts crops that are grown in Asia that we compete with here in the Carolinas. And that's why I give you that global perspective. Okay? With that, we'll go and wrap it up right here. We at Nutrient Ag Solutions and at the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina, thank you for your attention. Hope you look forward to our video next week. Thank you.